All right, welcome to another podcast, y'all. This is Doron Keidar, and today I have a special guest. She's a good friend of mine that we've been developing a relationship through social media. That's how we were able to connect, and because basically through the different work that we do, each individually is very similar people that we're involved with, and similar causes. And I think that Karine today, who is my guest, she's a Christian Lebanese. So as you're looking at her right now, it might not be as you imagined if I were to say, hey, how do you imagine a Christian Lebanese to look like or sound like? And so today we have a special guest that is going to be able to speak on behalf of what was it like to grow up in Lebanon, who, by the way, was my neighbor when I grew up. I grew up on the northern border of Israel in a small town called Kiryat Shmona, and we were actually neighbors during the Gulf War and during the different conflicts that we've had with the both nations, where Israel has been fighting the terrorists that have taken over her country, and at the time tried to take over the country, but unfortunately today have taken over the country and that have destroyed a lot of the relationships that Israel used to have with Lebanon, and has done a lot to also destroy the beauty of Lebanon, which was labeled the Paris of the Middle East. So that's just a little background to my guest, Carine Bassili. Welcome to the podcast. What can you tell the audience here a little bit as far as an introduction to yourself, and referring to all of the little tidbits that I just gave here about who you are, and then we'll dive into the different subjects that we're going to cover here on the podcast today.
Yeah, hello everyone, and thank you, Doron, for having me with you. It's been such a blessing and honor to have this friendship with you and your family, and yeah. So I have left Lebanon since I was almost 19, and actually almost 20, and I visited a few times before actually I was banned to enter the country, and my banning came due to a call from the Lord, to open up more, to see our neighbors, to see Israel, to talk to Israelis, and to do songs with them, songs of reconciliation, songs to bring us back together, and to go back to the original relationship that we had before Hezbollah came and took over Lebanon, because we were actually we were not really enemies in that time. So that's how I start doing these songs, and I'm not allowed to go back to Lebanon because of Lebanese government. But yeah, I'm going strong after what God's heart is for Israel. It's not really a political stand, but it's mostly a biblical stand. And seeing this conflict honestly in a completely different view, but at the end, it's the same thing, that we need to not hate anyone, and especially Israel. So yeah.
Wow. So you're banned from your home country simply because of your religious views, really, and not your political views.
Yeah, my family was never really part of any political party, and we were never really active politically. But yeah, it was mostly because me, I start getting closer to God, and I start reading the Bible, and He opened my eyes to scriptures about, His covenant and His promise, and like the whole story from the Old Testament, how He got them out of Egypt. Like, I start seeing it different when I start seeing it through His eyes. That kind of like unlocked something for Israel. So that's how the journey started.
So that's interesting. So did you grow up with an understanding of, as a Christian, that Israel is important and significant, or did you grow up with the classic Middle Eastern Christian, where you don't really think too much about Israel or the Jewish people, right? So when we say Israel, because Israel is a multi-ethnic nation.
Yeah.
So just to be clear, I'm Israeli, but I'm Jewish, And you have Arab Israelis, you have Druze Israelis, you have Christian Israelis,
Crazy.
Bedouin Israelis, Cherkessian Israelis. I mean, the list goes on. With, but yeah, how did you grow up? I guess viewing Israel as a Christian Arab in Lebanon, as a Lebanese girl.
Yeah, I'm a Maronite, Maronite Christian background, and it's like they're the Assyrian, the original people too of the land.
Mm,
And I grew up in the church, grew up actually in a Catholic school too. I've done
mm,
my first communion in the school. I've done, many of my studies when it comes to the Christians in my school. And honestly, like there was never really ever a talk about Israel importance. There was, even when I got older, where there was nothing even mentioned about Israel. um, we never really were, because people need to understand there is there is two kind of Christians when it comes to the faith. There's
mm,
people who actually read the word of God and they live it, and
yeah.
there's people who are Christians and they just want to be Christian, but they do not want to do anything, with the word of God, and they just want to follow a religion by just doing a duty. So I was that kind of Christian, just the
Mm,
duty, I because my family was, until later on, there was some another story, but growing, even when I start, going to a church that goes after the word of God, there was still no anything to do with Israel. There was never ever mentioned. So all the time I was in Lebanon until until 20 years old, there was never I was able to be exposed to that truth, because I
mm,
was not actually reading the Bible, because not really there is not really encouragement of reading the Bible. And I think
yeah.
we can end up later talk about how people can end up with some stuff. We're gonna get to it,
Certain
but
interpretations or
yeah,
what have you,
this is
right?
how we grew up. This is
Yeah.
how we're seeing people why in the Middle East they don't stand, because they don't read. They don't like to read, honestly.
Mm,
Arab people rarely, they don't, there's rarely people, they don't like to open a book and read it. I was one of them, just to be very honest.
yeah.
It would be
Yeah.
something right now very like interesting to me to read. But God did something in me to read the Old Testament, because I honestly, I read it for the first time when I was 23 years old.
Wow.
As my
The
first,
Bible,
yes,
as a as a, or not Bible believing Christian, I guess, because I think that's really the differentiation right there between many Christians, right? Is that I grew up Catholic, I grew up Protestant, or I grew up, Methodist, what have you. But then there's, Bible believing Christians, and the
yeah,
difference in that is that you read your Bible, right? And you
yeah,
actually looked into, what is it do I believe, right? And so you started to read the Bible as an adult, really. and
yeah.
and then somehow that led you to recognizing Israel, or seeing Israel in a different light. Like, explain that journey and how that came about.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the Bible that I had, I wish if I had it with me. It's in my garage, but I have still my first communion Bible that the Catholic Church gave me when I was 9 years old. Okay, when we did our first communion when we were 9 years old. And I this Bible doesn't have the Old Testament. It's only the New Testament.
Mm.
Like it's a very famous Bible we have in Lebanon, and
In Arabic, right?
yeah,
Like,
in
it's
Arabic.
not an English Bible
No, no,
for
no, and
for our
no,
audience.
no Old Testament. There isn't.
Wow, interesting.
It's it's a Catholic Bible.
Yeah.
But then when I started in the Bible in the age of, I think it was like, let me see, 19. Yeah, I was around 24 years old, and I read the Bible, and I didn't right away see, because there was different things in that time I'm nurturing from the Bible. It was having nothing to do with Israel, but I was receiving so much different things that I needed in that time. But then when I was around in the year of 2000 and 2000 and, 2016, and that was like around when I was 30 years old. And I was in a place. I was on what holiday? I think it was Sukkot. I think, or no, it was Rosh Hashanah. It was Rosh Hashanah, and they had a rabbi. And for the first time, I was listening. I think it was around 2017. I was first time I ever listened to a rabbi. Like never. I was never ever exposed to hearing a rabbi before. I had no interest.
Mm-hmm.
And he was
Sure.
speaking, and that was the first time I felt like he was talking about Israel. He was talking about, like connecting things, to the Old Testament, from the New Testament to the Old Testament. He was talking about, God's promises and all the like, and suddenly I just like I felt like there was like a veil in my face, and it was completely off of my, like, removed. And I was shook. That shook me, and I was just like, oh my goodness, like what is that like?
Mm.
And I was like, I read the Old Testament, why I didn't see this? So that's when I start reading the Old Testament again, and that's when I start like seeing the things, seeing God's heart, seeing his heart, and seeing his
Mm.
mind, and all his desire. And I start seeing completely different that I have ever seen before. And I start listening to music in Hebrew, and I just like start searching for the people, and I start searching in the history, and things pop up in my mind. Like I'd be driving and I search on YouTube, and I would listen to videos. Like I was like, I need to know the truth, like what's really going on. And like I had no desire to do anything with Israelis. Like I didn't care for them. Like I
Mm.
didn't hate them, but I didn't care for them.
Mm.
And then I start like a love for his people start coming up, like bubbling inside of me. And in 2020, um when like the whole country shut down, the whole world and all this,
Yeah.
um I actually I start connecting in January with people from Israel. I really felt God's telling me, go listen, go talk, connect to these people you are listening to. And I don't even know them. Like I don't know anyone in Israel. Like connect with who? Like I don't know these people. Like I never ever talked to Israelis before. Like I never ever had conversation with any Israeli. So I communicated with one of the ladies, the girls. She's a worshiper, and and then later on God just took me to that journey, connecting with more people that led to connect with you. And and then after that, they start having attacks from Hamas, from the bombing, and I start more following people from the other side to see the news from the other side. I never cared before. Like I never followed Israeli account. I never heard about Yusuf Haddad and all these people. Like I never heard about anyone, but I start
Yeah.
following them. I start like seeing the news. I start watching both sides, no more just listening from one side. And that's when I'm just like, oh my goodness, we have been deceived all this time. Literally, like it was an awakening. Like it was crazy. I would never forget these moments.
Well, it's also because you had personal relationships that you were developing online with actual people, not just looking at, like you said, like from both sides, like not just looking at the, um, the issue of what's happening, what's developing with war, with, like you said, from Gaza, right? Rocketing attacks and whatever, and just looking at the Arab media, which I think is what probably most people from your background would do.
Yeah.
Go to your Arab local news resource, Al Jazeera, etc., and be like, oh, okay, that's what's happening, and then write it off, right? And be like, well, here go the Israelis again with another aggression, another whatever. But then you'll instead, right, like you're saying, is talk to a local Israeli who's in a bomb shelter, and you're able to communicate with them and be like, wait, you're under attack right now, so this is like a
Yeah.
real thing that's happening to you. It's
Yeah.
not, you're not the big bad Israeli who's sitting in a fighter jet unleashing a barrage of rocket fire against, Palestinians, or against the Lebanon, right? So, but I also noticed that even in our conversations during the war,
Hmm.
when I've been deployed now to fight Hamas in Gaza, and that you were writing me and sending me concerns about your friends who live in Lebanon right now, and
Yeah.
that there's a developing essentially the war is developing in the north right now, the conflict that we're currently having,
Mm-hmm.
and your concerns, and you're asking me, right, and being able to ask the person on the other side, right, and be like, how do you think Israel's going to respond, because you're concerned for you know what I mean. And I think that's important for people to understand. It's not like, you've written off your community, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like, I don't care about them anymore. I'm on the pro-Israel bandwagon, and those people don't matter anymore, even though you've been banned by your own country. So can you explain about how's that whole complex scenario unfolding in front of you, and your concerns from where you're sitting now, safe from either one of these sides of the conflict, right?
Yeah, it's not an easy place to be in, because you will fall into the category of being a traitor. But it's just a process of learning how to not take it personal, because when it comes to when you're fighting for a cause, it's not, you are not the cause. There's a cause that you're fighting for. I am not the cause. I am just a sort of kind of weapon that I use my voice for, through singing or advocacy or whatever that is. So it's just it's not as easy, but it's just like, I remember even I was like, Doron, like, can you save my people if if anything happened? I trust
Yeah.
you to save my people in the rescue mission. Like, I care for my country. Like, this is my
Yeah.
country, and I think this, what I'm doing right now, is part of bringing the same enlightenment, the same eye opener that I had. I'm trying to share it with them, to be able for them, to wake up and see the truth. And I know there's many who knows about it, but the problem is, like, they cannot say anything. They cannot speak up, because we have a law in Lebanon that, will ban you if you are outside in different country, if you ever done anything with Israel, or if you are in the country, you will have, it's gonna be, is, you're gonna go to jail, or you're gonna be, maybe, I don't know, disappear, or being killed, or, kidnapped, tortured. I don't know what will happen to you. Like, we don't know. But the country, there's no really, we have seen people being assassinated as Christians, for whatever the reasons are politically, for their.
Well, just recently, one of your Christian leaders was assassinated, right?
I mean, I'm not part of this political party, but they're
No,
Christian. They are,
but
they're Christian. They do represent a Christian community. Doesn't matter what
yeah.
party. We do have the same faith. And
Hmm.
it's very sad what happened to this. And honestly, it's been very hard, because we don't have a president right now. I don't know if you guys know. Lebanon has been with no president for
People don't
over.
know.
They don't know that. It's been over
The
a year.
people don't know, so tell them.
It's been a year and a half, over a year and a
Yeah.
half almost, that we do not have a president. And the reason why, because the Christians are not agreeing, sadly, that we had to have Hezbollah in the government. And I think this was the one of the worst decisions they ever done, to have them in the government, because that would put danger over Lebanon even more. So that kind of get them to not to agree to have a voice in the government, to the voting to have president. And now they're not agreeing on the person, to take COVID, because he must be a Christian. And the Christian leaders are not agreeing for the one that Hezbollah want, and Hezbollah is not agreeing for the one who Christian want. So then we don't have president. As simple as that.
How long
And
has that been now that you don't have a leader in Lebanon?
it's been over a year and a half.
Over a year and a half.
Yeah, let me see,
So
October.
yeah.
October, let me see, where are we now? 4, 5, yeah, over a year and a half. Yeah, we don't have president. We have the government, that's the prime minister,
Yeah.
but he's a Sunni. Like, there's different, every religion take part in our government. So the presidency is actually for the Christian, the Maronite Christian, which is my background. And that's been like the always, since Hezbollah came, it's been always like an empty place, due to them not agreeing on who the Christian wants. And it's been really hard to see this taking place. And we've been seeing a lot of people migrating and leaving, Christians, with
Mm.
doctors and nurses, and like really geniuses coming out of Lebanon, due to this whole situation that taking place, because there's no security. We've seen the explosion of Beirut, that what happened with that. And there's no security in the country. The country is completely open. We have all these Syrian people in Lebanon, and the government not even protecting the people of Lebanon and putting them first. It's just it's been very, very chaotic. Plus the economical thing that we had to go through. I mean, we're still going through
Yeah.
the crisis that Lebanon had to go through. The money of the people was completely, taken, by the leadership. And it's just really sad, like the people are not learning, and the people are not, I believe honestly the people of Lebanon need to really wake up and do something before it's really too late. And I
Mm,
think this is why we are coming to be like, hey, listen, like you have to really see who is really your enemy here. Like your enemy are within you. And we are not saying like the Christians, honestly, if you want to be real, we cannot afford a war like this.
mm,
And we are not equipped, and we don't
yeah.
want this. We need a miracle. The only way, I think, like the miracle would be maybe just from Israel to help, but in the same
Mm,
time, like, still we are not ready for a war. The Christian people, the people of Lebanon are hurt. The people of Lebanon, literally, if you guys don't know, that when we had the explosion in Beirut, the Lebanese people were traumatized. Like
mm,
the kids were traumatized. And then after that, we had, I don't know if you guys remember the Turkey earthquake that
hmm.
was impacted all the way to Lebanon.
Yeah. Yeah.
The whole country was on the street, and we're talking about an earthquake. Like, and the people couldn't go back to their houses due to the earthquake. I mean, can you imagine a war that's gonna be raging and happening between either Hezbollah and the Christian, or Hezbollah and a big war with the people cannot handle it anymore. And this is
Mm,
my heart, is like, I'm concerned for our people. I know how much they're hurt, and how much it's been painful for them. The last 4 years have been really hard. The last 5 years, and my heart is like, I wanna see peace coming over this region. I want to be able to see a reconciliation. How Hezbollah is going to disappear, I don't know. We're praying, honestly. This is the only way we can fight it, is we're praying to see God come in and do something about it.
so basically, the reason why your country, your home country, is in absolute ruin and chaos right now is because of Hezbollah. I mean, is that a true statement that Hezbollah is the core problem that is destroying your country?
Well, well, if you're going to go back to the roots, it's actually Iran using their proxy Hezbollah. But
Sure. Sure.
yeah,
Yeah. So it's
yeah,
Hezbollah, right?
yeah,
And that's a sad reality for you, I imagine, to watch your country fall apart at the hands of these terrorists, um, outsiders. All right, so they don't represent you. They don't represent the different factions of Lebanon, which is just like Israel, multicultural and religious, with with the Christian, with the Muslim, and you also have Druze, I believe. Is that right?
yeah, we do, of course.
Right. You have some Druze, and you
Neighbor,
have
my neighbor right by the next my door was Jersey. They're amazing people. We love them.
yeah. And we just had I just had Mansour here, an Israeli Druze, and he was discussing a little bit about that dynamics where part of the Druze community aren't because of borders that have been made post World War I, World War II, etc. Then they're all split up as far as the families,
Yeah,
but they're an interesting little group there in the middle of the Middle East. And when I say little, I don't mean like it's because they are a very small minority, at least here, and I know also probably even smaller in other Arab countries that are much bigger in population than Israel is. Um, so you talked about an explosion that happened in Beirut. It was you're referring to the explosion that happened at the port, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah.
there were munitions held there by, again, Hezbollah, our friendly terrorist neighbor,
Somehow
and
they
and
popped up
and they were
every
just
second.
reckless.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're reckless with their weapons of mass destruction that they're transporting from place to place in order to target, again, Israel, and to instigate another war, another conflict, and all of it to get more funding from Iran and to get to basically be recognized, right, as Iran's pawn here in the Middle East, to target the Zionists, right? Israel. So I mean, is that a more or less like the reality here?
They said, like, after just reading all the lot of news about this explosion, like I heard like the amount of the ammonium nitrate that was even more than the explosion. It was way
Mm,
more, and they're saying that could be actually was the one that they were using in Syria against the Syrian. So it was
mm,
transferred there. That's what they've been saying. But right now they're
yeah.
trying to bury this news. They're trying to bury this. Um, there's many people who are they're going after it really nonstop. There is lawyers until today. They are not stopping. But many people's been attacked from Hezbollah, from some of their allies to silence the people who's trying to fight it, to find the truth, and they know
Mm,
the truth, but like they know the people, and the other side, the people who's been really fighting it and trying to get people um, to take them to the court. No, they're not showing up, and due to the corruption in our country, somehow they don't have to make it to the court, and
mm,
there's many people who still fight it until today, but they're not gonna give up. And I don't know how long. I mean, we saw what happened with the assassination of the Prime Minister Hariri. Um, like still, it's not fully you know, covered what really happened in that time. This is when I actually left the country, 2005, when after they killed them. I left like a month after, actually
wow.
less months, like 2 weeks after. I was the time for me to come over here with my visa and everything. So yeah, I left when the big explosion. I was supposed to actually get married there, but I couldn't due to this whole thing. My parents was like, get out of here. Get out of here. The country is not gonna be in a good place. And that's what happened. The country was like for a year, people like always scared to be at night out there staying home because an explosion is gonna happen, because they were assassinating all these people who are against Syria, against Hezbollah. They were assassinating all these Christian and there's some other religion too, whoever is opposing, on this organization. So it's just always been this way, like it's just um we are resilient, we can say that, but in the end we're a human being, just like for how long we want to live this way.
Mm,
It's just they always talk about the resilience of Lebanese, and but it just get to a time people are sick and tired, like they just want to live.
mm.
Even the conflict with Israel, like there's just like some of them I see comments, just leave them alone, and they're like, oh, you're Zionist. I'm like, just let me tell you, a word Zionist for Christian is not a bad word because it's in our Bible. Let's be real here.
Yeah.
Zionist, let me say this out loud. The word Zionist is not a bad word for Christians, okay? Because it's written in our Bible many times, and God called it Zion because it's kind of like it's a special name that he called Zion for. That's a special name that he called it, and because that's how much he loved it. And he said in Isaiah 62 in the Old Testament, he said, "For Zion's sake, I won't be silent. For Jerusalem, I won't remain quiet." And this is something written in our Bible. We as
Mm,
Christians, if we read our Bible, we need to be proud of being called Zionists, because we believe of the existence of our God, not the existence only for the land of Israel, and the existence of our God that they've been trying to erase. So just this is just like you know about the word Zion. So don't be concerned and sad for someone to call you your Zionist, and don't defend
yeah.
that.
So I think a good way to put it too, to further this thought. So Zion, like you point out beautifully, that is a scriptural term that God uses
Yeah,
to to demarcate a holy space that is His.
yeah,
So the land of Israel, okay, and I think this is where people confuse politics and religion, and that what motivates certain movements. So, what motivated Jews to come back to our land is not a political anti-Palestinian or slash Arab colonialist agenda. Okay, which is what we're accused of all the time. And how do people want to, like, name shame you, is like you pointed out, is say, oh, you're a Zionist. And it's like, oh
Yeah.
no, he just called me, or she just called me a Zionist, like, oh, what an insult. It's not insulting. You're right. And it shouldn't be. And if people have a little bit of understanding behind these terms that people are throwing
Mm-hmm.
around, so Zion, okay, is a demarcation. It's a term to locate and say, this is the pinpoint within Israel that
Uh-huh.
is the holiest place.
Yeah.
And then God uses that in scripture to then refer to the land as a whole too, right? Like the land of Israel as a whole. So it's kind of like intertwined a little bit, but it's if you go to the very root and the very exact, okay, what is Zion? It's actually talking about the Temple Mount. It's demarcating a holy space where God says, here, out of all of Israel, like this is the territory that I'm giving you, the Jewish people or the Israelites, but Jerusalem I'm setting apart as a place where all of the tribes need to come together,
Mm.
and it's a unifying factor, right, for Israel, for the tribes to come together and have one place that doesn't have a territory that's related or connected to the tribe of Benjamin or the tribe of Asher or what have you, right? It's not either one of ours. It's a what the world wants to do all the time, that this United Nations, they want to have this, like, this peaceful one world gathering, whatever, blah blah. But in God's scriptural pattern, it already exists in what he intended with Israel, with
Yeah.
Jerusalem. And
Yeah.
then Zion being at the very heart of that, right? So it zeroes in from the land of Israel, Jerusalem, Temple Mount, Mount Zion. Now this is where we're all supposed to come together and pray and worship the God of Israel, which then later became, to quote the prophets, right, and
Yeah.
talk about what Scripture says, that it then later says that my house shall be a house of prayer for
Yeah.
all nations.
Yeah.
So for those who are against or and wanting to mar the name of the Jewish Zionist movement, when we're talking about building a third temple, or we're talking about all this focus on where today's the Al-Aqsa from the Islamic period, we're actually referring to what God commanded us, what
Mm.
Scripture says, and the most radical Jewish viewpoint of this location is a house of prayer for all nations, and
Yeah.
that banner has been up at the Western Wall, feast after feast after feast. So in Israel, when we have the high holidays, you'll normally see these, the religious banners with the religious quotes from the Bible, and that is the one that is oftenly put up, and is the one that I've heard from the most extremist Zionist, right? That their worldview is, that this is also the place where all the nations of the world will come and worship the God of Israel.
Yeah.
So
That's the title of my song.
is that something you want to? Is that
5
something you want to
months
be
ago.
against?
I mean, I did a song "God of Israel" 5 months ago. So,
Yeah.
it's like, even the word saying "God of Israel," this is something you cannot even say. You're like a traitor just by saying, as Christian, He is the God of Israel. Okay.
Right.
I mean, how
Right.
many times it's mentioned in the Bible that He is the God of Israel? So, but here I am. I did a song that's called "God of Israel."
It's a beautiful song, by the way. It's a beautiful song. I've shared it, of course, on my social media. So if anybody's been following me, and that might, ring in your memory, that's coming from Karine. It's coming from you. It's coming from Yair Levi. It's coming from all these collaborations that you're doing. And talk about that, because I think that's, so here you have an Orthodox Jew, okay, Yair Levi, who's an Orthodox Jew, okay. So for some people out there might be a little confused. He's not a Christian. He's an
Yeah.
Israeli. He is Jewish, and he's Orthodox Jewish. I know him personally, so I know I can say this about my friend. And he's a Special Forces veteran of the Special Forces community, who served in the Israeli Commando Unit, Naval Commando Unit, so our SEALs, and was an officer there. And both Yair and I actually met on the battlefield in Gaza. at one point here in the current war that we've had here in Gaza. And so that was fun, to see see each other. And but in any case, so you have people like him, people like you, and other Christian
Mm-hmm.
musicians in North America who are doing collaborations and doing music together. Like, explain how did that come about, and tell us about that experience that you've been doing with all that.
This started in 2021 when me and Yair, we released our first song in 2021 in January, and sorry, 2022. Um, no, 2021. Sorry, I like to be 2021 January. We released our song. The
Well,
Refa.
it's the year of COVID, so I think for all of us,
Yeah, it was.
it's almost
Yeah,
like we've lost time during that period. I
I
you know.
know. Yeah, I met him in January in April 2020 when he released the Rafana, but we released our version in January 2021. And honestly, we were supposed to go live, me and him and some other people, in August 4th in the morning. That was when I woke up and when the explosion happened. And I didn't do my other live. I was because I started hearing like people saying like, "Oh, Israel hit the port, blah blah." I was like, "Okay, guys, listen, I cannot be live with you today. It's just really I cannot." But it was beautiful. They prayed for Lebanon. They prayed for us. It was really beautiful what they did. But yeah,
Mm,
that brought, we did the song together. When we released it, honestly, we didn't know. My heart was to be able to break those barriers of hate, and I was wanted to do something for healing because his song is for healing. The Refana. It's a very simple prayer, from Numbers, but it was just the music, the way that Yair was carrying the song. It was just beautiful, and that's I told him I want to do it in Arabic, and I wanted to sing
mm,
it with me, So that's how we started. And the song really was like all over the media in Israel, in the world, and, many places in Dubai news. And, it was just a beautiful fruit coming out for peace, of love and redemption and like forgiveness, reconciliation, like to redeem all this time, just from one person. And I know it's going to be contagious, just for more people to start raising up and speak up, it's like a domino, it's gonna happen.
mhm,
um and so and then we just and I start connecting, just like the war was taking place and my friends are in bomb shelter, and I start writing songs every time there's a war. I write songs. I go to my room, I start praying, I take my guitar, and I don't know how to I'm like, I don't know what to pray anymore, and then songs comes out, and so I wrote the song God of Israel, and we wanted to release it in 2020 to work on it. We had a set time in 2023 in October 26th, not knowing that after a year we're trying to put the song together. October 7th is going to happen, and that got us in a
mm,
place for Yair not to be able maybe to come because he's fighting in Gaza. We were not sure he's going to be able to make it, and somehow Yair, they give him the okay to come. They told him it's okay for you to go. We need your voice there. You need to fight in America too with whatever, with your music, with whatever you guys doing. So they give him the okay to leave, and we recorded the song. And I really believe that my weapon as a worshiper is a melody. There is a sound, that there is a way, that is a battle happening, when it comes to this world, that there is in the sound, in the music. You can fight things, you can fight hatred, you can release a sound of peace. People can be really touched emotionally by listening and opening their eyes. And I believe the same thing happened to me, listening from God and listening from a rabbi that opened up. I believe people can, by listening to a song, to be able to, there is a spirit carried by this song that can bring that unity, bring that forgiveness, bring that healing, restoration. And the God of Israel was a song calling out on people to come together. uh, you know um saying we gather all his sons from every nation, every tongue in the land of peace. Like, we're just like quoting these scriptures, trying doing a declaration of God's word in a song for such a time. It was really needed, and I believe God, being obedient to God, there is a fruit will come of it. Like He's listening to us, and He will do what we're saying. There's action will come through our praise and through our prayers and our declaration. I believe God is moving, to break these barriers, to open up one day the borders between Lebanon and Israel through our prayers and intercessions. And I know there's many people even in Lebanon. I cannot tell you how many people message me, hey Karine, we are from this place and we are praying for you. You are our voice. We don't have that voice, but you represent us. We are
Mm.
proud of you. And I was a wreck. I was weeping and crying. Just one message from them, it wrecked me. How about the rest of them that came later too?
Mm.
But we know they cannot do this, and it's just a responsibility to be able to carry that for our country, because the Christian people understand it, understand the biblical. There's many who understand that we Lebanese and Lebanon and Israel, if we're gonna go back to the Bible, okay, and it's something people don't want to talk about, but we are in the same promise that God promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the promised land. And people would not, they would be like, Karine, what do you mean? Israel can come take our land? No. What I mean is, like, we meant to be together. We didn't meant to have a separation. And the only one who will divide us and bring destruction to each other is as the enemy is using that hatred. He's been feeding on hatred for generation and generations to be able to separate us, because he's afraid of our unity coming together, Lebanese and Israeli and Syrian, the people who are actually supposed to be together, because we are family, we carry the same DNA. And the devil has been really going after the separation of us with our family, with our people who are in the same DNA, with same blood, with same faith, same God, same Bible, that we're supposed to be together celebrating some of the holidays together. And
Mm.
speaking of the holidays, they have been separating us. We're gonna go back to this, you and me talking about that, about all
Yeah.
the rest of the things.
Well,
So
I
this is
think that was,
the music. This is what got me to do all this.
yeah, I think this is really cool because, again, a lot of the haters out there who hate on people like you and me, who want to put us in a box and label us as extremist and
Yeah.
anti this, anti that. We're the ones who are actually on the ground creating and building bridges between our communities, our
Yeah.
peoples, our nations in the Middle East, while there are politicians sitting in the United Nations, sitting in different councils to negotiate, the war in the Middle East between Israel and or Lebanon and Syria and it's like, with all due respect, what have you guys done? What have you brought to the table? What kind of actual reconciliation have you achieved with all of your political agendas, with all of your,
They don't want
uh,
it. They
yeah.
don't. They don't
And
want
then, but yet you're never labeled as the extremist. You're never going to see that any titles or, in the media that basically exposes how, in fact, a lot of these individuals and organizations, United Nations being at the top of them in my list at least, who pose to be the ones who want to bring world peace. They use the
it.
scripture at the United Nations headquarters in New York, that they will turn their swords into plowshares. They're using the Jewish prophets to try to promote this overt or this external picture of, hey, we're all about peace.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, well, I was in Gaza fighting Hamas,
Hmm.
and and to my shock, I saw how those same United Nations buildings and headquarters and vehicles and resources were being used to support actually these terrorists that I was going after, right? Or me and my military.
Yeah, the UNRWA. Yeah.
And yeah, UNRWA and whatever, and I'm just going, wait, So where in what Zionist home, okay, that you're all, love to label us as extremists, in which Zionist home, if you go to John Hagee's home, right? If you go to Pat Robertson's home, if you go to Carine Bassili's home, you go to my home, are you going to find weapons of mass destruction against the other, right? No. What you're going to find is books. You're going to find us educating ourselves about history,
Yeah.
about God's word, and about culture, and how can I bridge the gap between my neighbor to promote peace. That is the truth versus the lie and the labeling and the name calling online. And then instead, you give a voice to the extremists, you give a platform to the extremists who are actually creating these wars, and they're creating these divisions. And I think a good example of that is what I saw on an interview with Tucker Carlson that both you and I responded to, actually, each on our own social media platforms. Independently, we each made our own statements because we both reacted to that because of this very thing that we are both of us are personally involved in building bridges.
Mm-hmm.
Both of us are personally involved in strengthening the relationship between our nations and or the Jews and
Yeah.
Christians and so on, right?
Yeah.
And Muslims, by the way. There are Muslims that we can work with. There are Druze that we can work with, right? That we can come together with. That we both share hopes for peace and building a better future for our communities. And then you have a statement or a piece that is made on the Tucker Carlson show that literally threw Israel under the bus. Can
Yeah.
you talk about that? Because I know you know about this, and you made some comments about this. And then we also discussed about the guy that he had interviewed there that I happen to know very well, about what they actually represent in contrast to.
You don't know him personally?
No, I don't know him personally, but I we'll talk about this. But yeah,
Yeah.
I do. I'll explain how I've been involved with this agenda here that is
Yeah.
happening in Israel, and
Yeah.
we'll try to hopefully expose some of this stuff, because again, like I just pointed out, you have those who are being portrayed as the peacemakers, like the United Nations and what have you, but then those who live here know who's the bad guy and who's the good guy.
The craziest part, that you've been seeing lately, all these things that, even from this priest, if he's his priest, right, Munzer Ishaq.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and it's I've seen his video one time. He was saying like Jesus is Palestinian and not Jewish,
Hmm.
and that
Yeah.
I was cracking up about this. I was like, what Bible are you reading? Just, I haven't seen that in the Bible that I have few translations, and I never seen that. Even my Catholic Bible doesn't say that. I'm like,
So exactly.
I don't know what he read. I don't know if he read. I don't know. I was just like wondering. But anyway, yeah, just hearing that statement from him, I
Mhm.
honestly, I was just like, first I was in shock. I'm just like, I don't know if I want to say anything, but I just couldn't. I
Mm.
cannot be quiet.
Yeah.
And just you know, the thing is like with Jesus, because we've been seeing comments about from Christians that say, oh, the Jews killed Jesus. We've seen all these comments, and I'm just like, you guys are ridiculous. Like, how
Mm.
did really Christianity was spread up in the world? It was actually through Jewish people who are his disciple. That's how actually it was spread in the world. And that's again, they're focusing on that one small thing that happened, which is we
Yeah.
already know he's coming to die. It's written here over 3 times that he mentioned about his death. It's written even in the Old Testament, prophecies from prophets that he's gonna come and he's gonna die. So it's just like hearing these things like he doesn't need anyone to defend him. He doesn't need Munzer Ishaq to defend persecution if there is persecution, because as Christians, it's written in the Bible that that we will be persecuted. I'm talking about how as Christian we're seeing persecution, and when we see it, we need to pray for the people who've been persecuted. But like like it's like we know it's gonna happen. It's like we cannot avoid it. Our faith, as we saw people in Egypt when ISIS was they beheaded these the Coptic Christians. If you guys have seen this, like they
Hmm.
didn't renounce their faith because they won't. This is something we know as Christian. We would not renounce our faith, and we will go all the way. And they were persecuted for it. So it's just like there is, for him to come and to speak about the Christian persecution the way he did, to flip them against Israel, it's like a double sin over here. It's not even like one time. It's like double his sin regarding Israel too, because this is really God's like love for his people. And not only that, you are not supposed to, as Christian, to turn anyone against someone. As Christian, we cannot turn someone against.
Incite, to
He
incite,
cannot
right?
do
Yeah.
this. And for him to do this, and I'm just like, really, what is he? Is he a leader in a church? Does he have his own church?
Yeah. So Munther Isaac is he's a Lutheran pastor that lives in Bethlehem. Now, here's an important fact. Okay, so Tucker Carlson was doing a piece on Christian persecution in Israel, right?
Okay.
Munther Isaac lives in Bethlehem, which is not under Israel.
Okay.
Bethlehem is under Palestinian control. So his gripe and his issues are with the terrorists, okay, organizations that control the Palestinian people's political positions of leadership, right? So the ones who govern the Palestinians is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
These entities are terrorist groups. Started with Yasser Arafat when it became a political movement. When the terrorist movements, right, the terrorist organizations that were underground groups that were in Lebanon, that were in Syria, that were in Egypt, that were in Jordan, and they just, they're moving around, and so eventually they created a political movement from Yasser Arafat. He's really the godfather, so to speak, of the politicization of a terrorist organization that's taking over and becoming the leadership, your prime minister, so to speak, and so on and so forth, right? Chairman of,
Mm-hmm.
and so Munter lives under that terrorist regime in Bethlehem. So here's the funny thing, right? That here's where I go now, Tucker Carlson, this is exposing your ignorance of the region. If you had a altruistic motive to really combat persecution of Christians in the Middle East, then you could talk to Karine. You could talk to plenty of my friends who are also pastors who live in Nazareth. Okay, here's to give you a contrasting city, and for anybody who understands what I'm saying, okay, and understands the region, Nazareth, Bethlehem are the two major Christian cities in Israel, historic Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Except that one is, like I said, under Palestinian control, one is under Israel control. So Nazareth is under Israel control, but they are having so the Christians living in Nazareth, and Nazareth used to be a predominant 80% Christian city, and so was Bethlehem. Like they're both similar as far as the population historically. In the past 30 plus years, both cities have come under Islamic jihadist attack, where Muslims have taken over both of these cities, both in population and in control and in domineering over the what used to be the majority Christian Arab population and now are the minority. So
Mm-hmm.
Christian Arab schools, okay, are now being flooded by, like I'd say 90+% Muslim Arabs who go to the Christian Arab schools, who are the best schools in any one of those cities. Specifically, I know about Nazareth. I can't really say for Bethlehem
Yeah.
as much. So, and if anybody wants to kind of fact check me, and it's like, oh well, in Bethlehem, da da. Okay, but I'm talking about specifically Nazareth that I know for sure. The top Christian school, as far as like the Ivy League or or the place that you want to send your kids to is overrun by Muslims. Now, some people might say, well, what, are you anti-Muslim? No, I'm just saying, okay, let's flip it. Are there any Muslim schools who are the top Muslim school in any one of those cities where you have, let's say, 90% Christians who attend that school because it's better for them and so on? So you get what I'm saying? So the point is that you can see that there is a strategic infiltration and taking over of these, if it's the school systems, if it's the political systems, if it's invading with population, right? So that you can overrun who used to be there and
Yeah.
basically take over. And I'm talking from personal experience. I'm talking from going and visiting Nazareth and seeing ISIS. Okay, ISIS. I'm not exaggerating. I have pictures of this. Pictures like the ISIS, the black with the ISIS slogan. Uh, they're putting propaganda outside the Church of the Ascension in Nazareth until the Israeli police, of course, took it down and whatever. But I remember when the Christian pastor told me, "Hey, like Doron, you have to see what is taking over here. Like they're overrunning us." And so I went and witnessed and documented, and it was like blowing my mind that in Israel, okay, in Israel, under Israeli control, this is happening. How much more in Bethlehem, where this Isaac guy is being interviewed and talk about
Yeah.
Christian persecution under Israel? I'm sorry, you're under Palestinian control, first of all. You don't speak for the Christian Arabs of Israel. But my friends in Nazareth, on the other hand, or in Jerusalem and in all the different communities here where I have, if there's anybody who has more connection to the Arab Christian population in Israel, there's very few people that I know who are Jewish and have that an actual relationship with many different Christian Arab leaders. And I can tell you that is a bunch of malarkey. It's nonsense.
It's just like when I saw this interview, and I was just like, you know, and honestly, in Lebanon too, we actually, by the way, we do have the same, like, Muslim come to the best Christian schools too, like, because they know their education is really, it's really really good. It happened in Lebanon too. So anyway, but when the interview and saw interview, I was literally start thinking about the thing that took place in Lebanon, honestly, against the Christians. Okay, and I mean, if there is more, if you people know, there is more Lebanese outside of Lebanon than actually in Lebanon. The Christians, there is like with not Christians. I don't know exactly how many they are outside of Lebanon, but I know there's like, just in Brazil alone, there's 7 million Lebanese just in Brazil,
Mm.
7 million, and there's many of them are Christians. And this is the thing, is like just going back and see like how much like they're trying to talk about persecution of Christian, and I'm like, where were you when we were persecuted, when my family were persecuted, when we were attacked, when all these missiles fell in Lebanon on the Christian areas, like when the Palestinian came to Lebanon, and all these bombs that came, and they were killing Christians by ID, like they take their ID, because in Lebanon, you probably don't know. Do you know that, Doron? In Lebanon, in our ID, I wish if it's my ID is right there. It's written the religion. So when they take your ID,
Mhm.
they can see what is your religion. And I wish if they didn't do that. I don't know why you have to do this. But they used to stop on the checkpoints and take people's ID. And if you're Christian, you get killed. Okay, and that was by the Syrian and by the Palestinian checkpoints. And
Mm.
the thing is, like, when the Palestinians came to Lebanon, and I know that from stories from many people, in Lebanon, I've heard it in documentaries, and from people who were fighting against the Palestinian, like how when they came to Lebanon, they partners against this Muslim organization, and they start going after the Christians. And the first bomb they actually fell in Lebanon. In It was my great grandfather who passed away. My mom's grandfather who actually died when the missile came. And that was after they actually they they killed one of the guy of Bashir Jmail. He was doing a mass in one of the area next in my hometown, and I was not born, but my mom told me the story that when they killed him, you know, and they couldn't go to their house because they shut down the area where this whole conflict happened. And I don't know if you heard about Bostein Remain. It's actually when they killed this guy, the Christian bodyguard of this president. They actually the Christian the Palestinian came with a bus full of people with weapons. They were passing from the same area where the mass was going, and then they started to shoot, and they shot all the Palestinian, and they all got killed, the fighters. So in the early morning, that's when the war started, and that's where the first missile that fell on my great grandfather, and this is how the whole explosion of this fight with Palestinian in Lebanon. I mean, it started in my hometown, and my family was very involved in this war. Like they were very hurt, and many of my family passed away due to this war and the Syrian war. But anyway, we are very so when I talk, is not I'm talking out of like ignorance of what happened. I have family who lost their life on the
Mm.
hand of the Palestinian. I don't hate them, you know. It's just that we want to just put those things out there like, hey, where were you not defending the Christian at that time? Why you didn't talk about it in that time? Where no one ever really riots. I went back to see if people went to the street for us. No one ever went out for us when we were persecuted. Did you know that even there was like massacre took place exactly what happened in October 7? It happened to the Christians in in one of the region. It's a very well known area, and it's called the شو اسمه دمور not Damur. I'm sorry, I forgot the name of the city. The massacre of anyway, but
In Lebanon, we're talking about
yeah, in Lebanon.
in Lebanon.
In
Yeah,
Lebanon.
just to be clear.
In Lebanon, yeah, in Lebanon. So the same thing that
Yeah,
happened October 7th, it happened
yeah.
to the Christians actually, and there was raping, there was burning, there was what else? They cut, the beheaded and stuff, and what else they did? Oh, we have one that you guys don't have, which is they actually crucified some people too. They did a
Mm.
crucifixion for some of the Christian. This is something didn't happen. So we have
Yeah,
more another extra way that they did it with our people.
yeah.
But anyway, but
I
no,
remember that. I remember that when they did that. I remember that they were crucifying Christians is as an extra sting towards the Christians. So yeah, I remember that. I remember when that took place, and it was horrifying. Um, it is horrifying. It is horrible. What again? We're talking about Islamic extremist groups, okay, jihadist groups. I'm not talking about every Muslim, believes and acts out these atrocities. So we need to call things out for what they are. You have Islamic extremist groups that are led by the Islamic Brotherhood, mainly here in this region, that are domineering over the Christian minorities, who have flooded and taken over historic Christian communities like Bethlehem, like Nazareth, and they're
no,
systematically trying to persecute and to muscle out these Christian communities, and they're doing it successfully, unfortunately, both under Israeli control in Nazareth. And as an Israeli, I'll own up to what we're doing wrong. I think that the Israeli government needs to combat this extremism, this systematic bullying of the Christian minority groups living in Israel, and that's in Nazareth. But in Bethlehem, there's nothing we can do about it. Okay, because again, if Israel were to intervene in Bethlehem, then we're again colonialists. We're again military occupation, and all these slogans against us if we were to intervene there, right? And
yeah,
that's just the reality. Is hey, you guys want Palestinians to be in control of an area? That's what you get. So Muntar, who's in Bethlehem, he cannot speak for the Christian community in Israel. First of all, let's be clear. Uh, Not to mention, who are you to talk about anything when it's the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem that came under siege by the terrorists back in I think it was like 2000, and it was a crazy showdown. Priests were being beaten silly by the terrorists. I mean, they humiliated them, beat them, I believe tortured some of them. But again, I forget the exact details. But I do know that they physically assaulted the priests, and were holding the Nativity, holding themselves siege in the Church of the Nativity, because the Israeli special forces were chasing terrorists that held themselves hostage, and held hostage the priests at the Church of the Nativity, and it was this crazy showdown. And this happened up until when Israel was in control of the area, and then we gave it over to the Palestinians and said, okay, so you guys are going to be in control of this area. You're going to, allow peace and whatever and whatever. And basically, Israel got sick of being in charge and in control of an area that is out of control. And that was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. And we said, fine, it's yours. And so if there's any criticism about the persecution, it needs to be pointed at where it's coming from. If anything, Muslim minorities, Christian minorities, Druze, and we had this on my last podcast, they are the most protected minorities in the Middle East, period. So since Israel became a state in 1948, for the first time in the Middle East, did these minority groups actually have freedom and from persecution, directed persecution at them. And so Israel actually protects these minority groups. Not just that, if you're an Arab Muslim or an Arab Christian in Israel today, you enjoy the benefits of having an Israeli citizenship and Israeli benefits as an Israeli, but you also don't have the same responsibilities. In other words, I have to send my kids to the military to do military service. It's mandatory. Druze have to send their kids to the military. It's mandatory. So in other words, we have to pay a price, right? No, who wants to go to military? Who wants to do military service? Very few people, with all due reality, with all truth. But these minorities, again, get the benefits of being Israeli, but they don't share the responsibilities. That is truth. That's fact. And the military that is mandatory is also the one who is going to protect those freedoms, right? Our government is going to protect those freedoms. And more than that, you can have a seat in the government. Talking about government, you can have a seat in the government. And we have a Muslim representation in the government. Unfortunately, we still don't have a Christian representation in the Israeli government, at least not a Christian party. Okay. And so that's something that's lacking, because the Christians here are, they're afraid to make their voices heard. They're not political. They don't get involved in politics, and therefore they don't have a representation. And I think that's sad. And that's something I've been trying to be involved in my connections and involvement with the Christian leaders here, and kind of encouraging them and nudging them and saying, hey, you need to run for politics. You need to represent your people. You need to go, you want to represent your community. You have to have, but again, it's fear, it's intimidation. And they're always telling me, but the Muslims will persecute me if I'm too vocal, and so on and so forth. And that's why I don't have any documented interviews with any of these individuals where you can show their face and their real voice and so on. And then I don't want to, every time I edit one of those videos, I'm like, oh, it looks so horrible. It's like this weird voice, and you don't see the face. You don't really hear I don't feel like you're really engaging with the actual voice of the person. So I've actually scrapped any of those productions I've done in the past. And that's reality. That's truth versus all this spinning and nonsense that we're seeing being. So what do you think about the Christian Palestinianism movement, and claiming that Jesus is a Palestinian, and this rewriting of history that's taking place? How do you see that?
Where do we start?
And do you think it actually supports the cause of Christians here? Let's take it even further. Like, is that actually going to build any case and or support for the Christian community that we're discussing right now? Like, is that helpful, or is that a negative? How do you see that?
Like it's embarrassing. That's how I see it, just to be very honest.
Mm,
Whoever believes this and say it, when I saw this video, it's embarrassing that Christians can go up and say these things, claim of, Jesus is Palestinian, he's Palestinian, and like, it's just I'm like, there's so much I want to say about it, but just I like my like, but I don't want to, like, just to say, like, because it's, you have to just, there's things you have to keep inside of you. But
yeah, yeah.
it's and that's why we're here, to speak up
But
about
is
it.
it a true representation of the Christian community? I guess is a
Of course it's
simple.
not. This is so
Yeah,
wrong. This does
yeah,
not represent our faith at all. I mean, let's go back to the roots of our faith. The
yeah.
roots of faith is what? Is actually is Jewish. It's Jewishness, okay? It's like Jesus was Jewish. Jesus was, like, he used to celebrate Passover. He used to celebrate Sukkot. He celebrated, like, all these holidays. Like, he was a Jew. Come
Yeah.
on. If you don't read your Bible, you would not know really who is Jesus is, and what he really is to. Because for me, I really had to go to synagogues to understand more Jesus, because that's what I did personally. I wanted
Mm,
to go to synagogue. I wanted to know what I'm missing to understand really all these false claim about Jesus, about our Christianity, that got me to a place, that got us in. There's a place in the Bible in Roman 11:11 says that that the Jewish are the roots and we are the branches. Like, and I
mm.
want to say something from that book. It's a book I'm reading for Pastor Craig Denham. Um, that he's saying here, when Christianity began to reject its Jewish roots and attempt to replace them with its own story, it had the effect of not only forcing a parting of the way between Jewish followers and followers of the Christ way, but Christianity also began to define itself in opposition to the very people that had given them their original heritage, the Jewish people. The church began to lose part of its own story and its shared roots of the grounding it has with Israel. As a result, the church lost its foundation and was now without roots, floating in the air with no history or connection with that God had been doing since the beginning of time and what he would do as he click Max history. And this is what we
What's the
are.
title of this book?
This book is called Rediscovering the Original Jesus Movement. And when I read this part, and I
Mm,
already knew that, but just like when I read it from the book, really, like, we've been disconnected. Like, when I actually went, let me give you an example, just something very of my research and my adventure, trying to go back to see the roots of our faith. Okay, that was, maybe I should call it the roots of our faith. And when I went to the synagogue, and the Jewish synagogue, and I was there sitting, okay, there's liturgy, okay, and it was
yeah,
very new to me, and I'm like, okay, I'm not used to too much religious stuff, but
yeah.
I wanted to know, and I really enjoyed it, and but then it hit me. I was sitting there, and I'm like, okay, our priest used to do this, okay, and he used to do that, and the people used to do this, and I'm like, okay, hold on a second here. Like, this is a lot like our mass. Like, what is going on? And that is, I like, it was like an eye opener. I was like, oh my goodness, like, they took all these things from, like, even the chanting of the Torah. Okay, the priest, he taught, he sings the scriptures, in different languages, the Ashuri, and plus he hold the Bible, the Word of God, and he walk with it, when he want to read the Bible. And I'm like, they were holding the Torah and they were walking with it, and like, and I'm like, what is the heck is going on here?
Yeah.
It was just that, that moment of like, my goodness, like, they're trying to separate us from our faith, from the roots of it, and
Yeah.
completely neglecting it. And this is I believe that there is a depth in our faith, and connecting it to Israel. Like when we're gonna go to that direction, it's gonna connect us with Israel. It's gonna connect us to see God how He see Israel. And this is why I believe the devil, I believe there is the devil who doesn't want us. There is even people who are signed with the devil who doesn't want us, that they're used as God can use people. This devil can use people to separate us from that, so we would not even care for Israel, because in the end, Israel is going to play a role in the end days. And in the end, the devil's end is going to be when things going to happen in that region. So
Mm.
anyway, it's just so I was able just to be like, oh my goodness, like it's crazy, like how much we've been deceived. The deception as Christians in this world, and with the replacement theology, that literally when this October 7 happened, I went to the people, that famous people I follow in America, to see if they even prayed for Israel, if they even mentioned, if they posted something, and I saw nothing. And I was just like heartbroken for that. And
Yeah.
I'm like, really, what are you, what's your faith, like what are you reading? So that's kind of like what got me to be like, okay, we have to go to churches, we have to do something about this. Like I know there's people from Israel, they do advocacy, but let me just tell you, they go there, and most of the people who go listen to them are actually
Yeah.
what? Actually Jewish. They already know the truth. So it's not
Yeah.
going to do anything. With my respect to their advocacy and what they're trying to do, they're mostly Jewish people. Like I saw someone else famous who came here, and he went to Jewish Persian, and they already know the truth. What need to be done? People need to build connection with the Christian. I call the Jewish people to build connection with churches, and to really the one who have really faith in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I'm calling you to go do visitation and like get to know pastors. Do not be afraid, and that's where you need to go talk to the church, the Christian people. This is the place where you need to go, and not to go to places where only Jewish people come listen to you and they already know the truth. So this is just what.
Yeah. So I think a good way to try to shed a little light on these different agendas, and I think it's important people understand these are our agendas. So replacement theology is an
Mhm.
agenda from Gentiles, I would say, because I don't think this is something that supports a Jewish cause, but really it's Gentiles who come into a Jewish faith and Jewish movement, right? That want to have their own identity, and they want to promote their own thing while hijacking this Jewish faith and movement, right? So that's essentially the early church, right? They're all
Yeah,
Jews. They're all worshiping at the temple.
yeah.
They're all Torah observant, or at least a good majority of them are. On today's standards, Paul is a Pharisee, so that's basically like he's a ultra orthodox in today's terms. And so this is the guy who is spreading the gospel in the nations around the world,
Hmm.
that then gets hijacked by a political movement. Really, it became politicized through Rome, and what I'm seeing today, because you had the Reformation movement that went back to its biblical roots, like you're saying, going back to what does the Bible say about us, what does the Scripture have to say, and
Hmm.
there has been really powerful Christian movements to come back to their biblical roots and faith. And then now, simultaneously, post the rebirth of the state of Israel, which is what kind of tipped over the theology of anti-Israel and going, oh, Israel matters now, right? So there's also a book about this called Israel Matters. I think that's actually the title, so you can Google that. I'll try to add this into the interview here later in the resources. And so now, then they started to realize, wow, Israel matters, and now, they're not Christ killers who are paying the price for that by being exiled and roaming the world as a bunch of nomads and reaping their judgment, like the traditional Christian view was for many centuries, unfortunately. And so now there's a restoration movement, but then it seems like it's like a boomerang coming back. And then now you have again the revival of replacement theology, and and or going back to replacement theology, depending on the denomination. And then these are movements, right? And so people need to be aware of this. So people who are supporting Munthal, for example, again, I hate to just dump all this on the one guy, but
Yeah.
because he was interviewed and I think he's well known on a public platform to represent this movement here in our region and in my backyard. He also hosts Christ at the Checkpoint conferences. So again, Google this, guys, Christ at the Checkpoint. I've been following these people for many years and combating them through gathering intelligence of the work that they're doing. I mean, gathering intelligence. In other words, I'm aware of what they're doing. It's not like I'm gathering intelligence, giving to the Israeli government, right? Just whoever wants to misconstrue what I just said there. But basically, I'm aware of this, and I'm aware of these movements that are political, and they're trying to give Jesus a new identity and say, "Oh, he wasn't Jewish; he was Palestinian." Well, then you're feeding into the Palestinian lie that isn't older than a few 60 years or what have you. And so I'll give you an example. Where does Palestinianism start, or where's Palestine come from? So there's a new book out there that has just got released by an author called Lars Anderson. The book is called The Truth About Palestine. So I highly recommend you guys getting this book and reading it, because it's going to be one of the best resources on this particular issue of the Palestinian identity. And I'm just going to read you one of the quotes out of this book. And by the way, I'll do a whole segment just on this book, actually. So there'll be a follow-up. But I'm just going to I'm going to wet your whistle, so to speak, guys, on this subject. And so this is what Yasser Arafat himself said about the Palestinian identity. So he says, "The Palestinian people have no national identity. I, Yasser Arafat, man of destiny, will give them that identity through conflict with Israel."
Wow.
So in other words, they don't have an identity, and he's actually the godfather of the Palestinian people. And as you know, Karine, the Arabs here in my region can't even say the word "pa." In other words, phonetically, "pa." We always joke about it, Israelis. We go and order a shawarma or falafel, and the guy says "bitta hummus." We're like, he said "bitta." He didn't say "pita" because he can't say "p." But again, there's a very, very good resources. I will dive into this more, and the birth of the Palestinian movement, because it's a movement. It's not an identity. It's not people. They're Arabs. The Palestinians that we use the term Palestinian, and you used Palestinian who invaded Lebanon. They're Arabs, but they're also the Arab tribes, because I like to put it in more of the Middle Eastern context. These are tribes. So like Karine comes from a tribal people group, if you will, that is connected with a Christian Maronite tribe. And so then you have these Muslim tribes. Just like she's Maronite, they identify as, the Halabi family or the Al-Masri and whatever. And then based on that tribal identity of the Muslim identity, I can then also identify and tell you where you come from in the Middle East based on the name. And so on. And so these guys are actually the lowest of the tribes, if you will, right? They're the ones who are the least wanted amongst the Arab community and the Muslim Arab community. And they're the ones who are the troublemakers, because they feel like because I'm not of the higher echelon of my community of the tribes, right? And in the Middle East, it's a strong place. It's the one who carries the biggest stick is the one who's going to rule the area. And if you don't have a big stick, you can get your butt kicked. And that's the sad reality, is that really the reaction of just the reality of the region of, I have to fight for my identity. I have to fight for, and so they through conflict and through propaganda created a movement, which is the Palestinian people. They fabricated this term, and they use it as a political and a tool and a weapon, mainly against Israel. And then now people like Munther Isaac, they're using it to demonize Israel, right? To juxtapose his community and basically rob my identity, because I've seen his claims. He says if you're going to do an identity, not identity, what's that called? A DNA. If he says if you do a DNA test, we're the real Jews, and that's something that the Jewish people are afraid of, is doing DNA tests, because then they'll discover that we're the Palestinians are the real Jews, right? Yeah. Yeah. So again, I've been covering this guy for many years, like I said, gathering intelligence, if you will. In other words, just listening to what they're saying. And I'm going, wait, what did he just say? So they're robbed. So, and really what they're trying to do, like I said, it's a political movement, and they're trying to rob Israel and the Jewish people of our identity. And they're trying to rob the Christians of their true identity, which can, like you quoted from Hebrews 11, I believe you said, right? That
Romans
that's
11.
yeah, Romans.
Romans 11, yeah.
Excuse me, Romans 11, where your identity is in Israel, right?
Yeah.
And that Israel is the root. Israel is and we're the branches that come out
Yeah.
of the root. So when you start to follow through these theologies, and you follow it all the way through, it's actually damaging to yourself. You're erasing your own foundation.
Yeah.
And talking about Jesus, right? Build your house on the
Yeah.
right foundation.
Yeah.
You want to use a good quote. Well,
Exactly.
my suggestion to my Christian brothers out there: follow what Jesus said. Build your house on real foundations, and
Yes.
don't make fables. Don't make these stories. Don't make these, that have nothing to do with history and or the region. Stick to the truth. Stick to
Yeah.
the Bible. Maybe don't stick to what me or Karine are saying. What does the Bible have to say about this? What does history have to say about this?
Doron, I want to ask you. I haven't heard. Have you heard any Christian pastors or priests, in Israel, be able to speak about it? Or because we know, like, I don't know what's the percentage of people in the land who are replacement theology too, and what's the percentage of people who really believe? I know there is. I mean, I know 100% there is people there, but no one is actually able to speak up about it. Is it more because of fear, more because of intimidation? Like, what's going on with that?
I think a lot of people um, are afraid because of like I pointed out, like the biggest problem from if I'm going to gather from the field, from my conversations with my fellow
Yeah.
Christian Arab friends that I have relationship with, and ask them these questions, like, well, why does this guy have a platform? Why does anybody? And really, it's because they all point out, because it's fear and intimidation, and that these people were able to get onto a agenda that has benefited them both monetarily, right? So you have big evangelical churches in North America, for example, that are going to fund this voice, fund this agenda that's anti-Israel. And
Mm-hmm.
then it goes straight in line with the Islamic agenda that, like I pointed out, and I'll talk about this later in another podcast, and talk about the Palestinian agenda that is a
Yeah.
political agenda. It's not a people group. It's not a region. It's not
We've seen it
it's
in
not
North America. We've seen it.
so it goes right in line with that. And so then now Munthar does not have to be targeted anymore by his Muslim Arab extremists who are trying to persecute the Christians in his region. And then they can, and then what he does is, and what these guys typically do is they just dump all of the blame on Israel, not realizing, again, like I said, follow this all the way through to the end. It's going to destroy you. You know, you think it's just like the Islamic agenda goes together with these anarchists, like they're teaming up together, and so you see all these anti-government, anti-United States, anti-Israel, like they all kind of come together, is the blue-haired Karen, as labeled on social media. So sorry for any Karens out there. um,
I'm
my
Karine.
foster
I'm Karine, not Karen.
Yes, well, my foster mom is Karen, and she is not at all follow or fall under that category. But what I'm saying is, So as you know, just to use these what we've seen online and we've seen happening socially in our societies, is you have all these extremists and extremist groups. So the one is very secular, anti-God. Ironically, though, they team up with the Islamic extremist agenda, who are obviously pro Allah, pro a God, right? And and religious, or at least outwardly religious, and their dress and their food
Yeah.
laws and whatever. Yet ironically, they team up together. But you know what I'm saying? And I think that's
The
some
Pharisees.
yeah. And it's just interesting. So you see these groups working together, but really, at the end of the day, once they're done with their main agenda at the present, which is anti-America, anti-Israel, the next thing they're going to do is they're going to kill each other.
So Munzer get paid to do what he's doing.
I'm not going to say that he does, but I'm just saying, like, following again my friends who do not get heavy funding from big Christian organizations to promote their pro-Israel approach,
Yeah.
and or they don't go public and say it publicly because they have made it very clear to me that if they do, they're going to get targeted. They're going to be persecuted by the Muslim extremists who will make an example of them and be like, oh, you want to be a Christian who's pro-Israel? No problem. We'll make an example of you. And like I said, just recently, you've had a politician who is a Christian in your country that was assassinated, and he's not a pro-Israel guy. Okay.
Wait, we don't know
So
anything that part.
so how much more if you're going to be pro-Israel, so to speak, right? And want to collaborate with the enemy, the Zionist, it's
that political party is always like accused by being a Zionist. The party,
yeah,
it's always they're like, they will never stop accusing them. So like whatever.
yeah, but that's not exactly, but they're not, and they're not in any case. So I think we've done a good job here. I'm hoping, at least, to the audience that is listening and watching, either listening by audio or watching this online. Hopefully, we've been giving you enough information to understand that these are very real agendas, and that they are actually, these are the anti-society, bridge building agendas. They don't promote peace. They don't promote coexistence. They're actually trying to destroy that. And the only place in the Middle East where there is a coexistence, where there is freedom of religion, freedom of political opinion, is in Israel. If there's another place in the Middle East where you have that, and by the way, the brother in Bethlehem, who is probably also going to use the claims of apartheid. Not also, they've used the term and used that, apartheid, and that the Zionist movement is a colonialist movement. Well, if Israel's an apartheid, why is it that I have Christians who are able to roam freely from Bethlehem into Israel, Muslims who are able to roam freely with a work permit from Ramallah, which is the very heart of the Palestinian control and the heads of the Palestinian movement? How come Palestinians can come from Ramallah into Israel proper, but I cannot, as an Israeli, enter into either one of those two places? I can't go to the church of the Nativity in Bethlehem with a Christian group, for example, because I work with tourism besides security and all the things.
Yeah.
And many times I've been asked, can I follow you into Bethlehem? And or clients that I have in the security world. And this is where we have to actually pass my clients on to another local entity that we collaborate with, because I cannot secure any of my clients, in Bethlehem, because I'm literally entering into PA controlled area that bars and forbids Israelis from entering. There's big red signs that say no entry to Israelis, entry by risk of death. And this is translated in three languages: English, Hebrew, Arabic, right? And so you want to talk about apartheid, you want to talk about the lack of tolerance, you want to talk about persecution. It's only in one place.
You know, Doron, before we end this, I want to share one thing that it's just been something about, speaking about bridge builders,
Yeah.
and we have seen, especially recently in the war, when they were able to get to a school and seeing how they've been teaching children to hate and to kill and to hate Jews, and the things that we saw in books online and on social media. And it was just like, honestly, it was very just like, man, it was very crazy just to see that all the stuff that you guys exposed,
Yeah.
through the educational part of Gaza. And that took me back to something that that I was able to see previously to what before the war, really Israel's heart, what they're trying to do. Because I don't know, we probably know that, but many people don't know this, that we, me and my friend Yair, this last fall, for the first time in Israel, they were actually in the curriculum of the school, in the public school, in the language of the Arabic language. Because all, you probably know that more than me, Doron, that all the school in Israel, they teach Arabic, mandatory language, right?
Hmm.
So they had a new curriculum, and in that new curriculum, they have a chapter 5 called Hope, the voice of hope. And this chapter, it's like 6 7 pages. It's about the collaboration. Me and my friend Jair, they want to teach the generation about this collaboration. And what they're doing is like, they take the phone, they scan the barcode, and they go to um, to an interview, our interview, and they hear our Arabic interview, and they translate it in Hebrew, kind of way to learn Arabic.
Mm.
And it's just beautiful. So when I was just seeing that part, of Israel, and I really wanted to share that just kind of was very like eye-opening to really what Israel really want to sow into their kids. They don't want to sow hatred. Of course,
Hmm.
there's maybe few people, the media want to focus on, but we want to focus, really, this is the level of education that we're trying to put it in their curriculum, and it's already out there for another, I think he said, around between 10 and 12 years. They're gonna learn about this collaboration. And it's just like, I'm showing you here, like, kind of the both side, what they're trying, what Israel trying to do, and really what, the Gaza, the people in Gaza, and the education, what they're trying to teach their children. Just think about that. This is crazy.
It's two different worlds. It's two
Yeah.
different worlds, 100%. I saw the propaganda myself on during our operations in Gaza. We had got bucket loads of intel and information that we had seen from the field and in the school systems and in the curriculum, and it wasn't staged. I mean, I'm telling you, every home that we'd come in contact with and saw, the school books and what have you, and,
Yeah.
and or and or terrorist paraphernalia, terrorist like T-shirts and flags and what have you. You could find it almost in every home that I can think of that we had, that we had engaged with. And it was to me, it was sad to see that level of just demonization. Even board games teaching you
Yeah, I
on
saw.
how to kill Jews, and so on. Whereas you're right, and I've never seen anything in Israel in any school curriculum here that is anti-Arab, that is anti-Palestinian, that is anti-Christian, that is anti-Muslim, or Druze, or any other. I haven't seen any of that here. The opposite. We learn Arabic in school. We teach our kids to build bridges and to try to connect with our Arab neighbors,
Mhm.
and to try to promote peace with our Arab neighbors, irregardless of how much our Arab neighbors have promoted the very opposite.
I
We
know.
still are resilient in, we will not accept this agenda to destroy our peoples, and we will promote peace in our community. And we're just waiting for the day when the Muslim and the Christian Arabs
Hmm.
will promote peace in their community towards us back, when there'll be a hand that reaches back at us and says, yes, again, you don't have to be a Zionist to do this. You just have to recognize that this is actually what's going to help
Hmm.
the future generations of our children, if you care about actual peace, and or if you want to perpetuate the conflict between our peoples. Then yeah, go ahead, promote Christian Palestinianism. Go ahead and join the Christ at the Checkpoint conferences in Bethlehem. As a tourist, you can go there. to the conference, and that's how they work it out. So it's going to be a bunch of tourists who go there. I won't be able to go there. I won't be able to attend any of those conferences and make my voice heard and just
probably because if it's by the Palestinian government.
Yeah.
Probably.
Well, so there's no one to really be able to counter that, and the only one who's been able to do it is Dr. Michael Brown, who is a well-known spokesperson for Jewish Christian relations around the world. People can look him up as well. Dr. Michael Brown, who's a very well-known Jewish believer in Jesus, that he's gone there and he's debated this theology himself, because he's not into replacement theology.
Actually, in that book, saying something.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. He's if anything that's published in Christian world. He's a well-known Christian leader, and he's discussed this himself, by the way. So you can, I'm sure, find it on any of his podcasts where he discussed being there, making his voice heard, combating these lies that these guys are peddling in particular this conference, but in general, it's starting to spread widespread in evangelical churches that are just, they're not biblically sound, and that's why it's easy to sway them now against Israel and to sway them and into Jesus was a Palestinian and this whole new agenda. But it's a new agenda, and that's something people need to understand. This is not historically true. It's not biblically true. If you want to believe that, knock yourself out. But people like Karine and myself, we're going to promote peace. We're going to promote collaboration between our peoples and the religious groups. So you have Orthodox Jews like Yair Levi, who will be able to come and play music and to talk and to share experiences and ideas with our other, the Christian community of the other, and that's okay. Like, we can do that, but it's not going to be if the one side is trying to demonize me and single me out as being the negative problem here because I happen to be Jewish and I happen to be a Zionist and I happen to believe in the Jewish homeland that is my ancestral homeland that I've come back to, and that I'm welcoming everyone else to be a part of this restoration process. And if you grew up here in the Middle East and you grew up here in the land of Israel, and at the time that was renamed Palestine by the Romans and renamed in order to erase the Jewish identity of this area, you're welcome. You're welcome to enjoy the benefits. And the Christian Arabs here are some of the wealthiest in the world, some of the most happiest, and enjoy, again, the benefits of the state of Israel, which is one of the happiest, like when you do a survey of people's happiness level. So Israel, I think, is like number 5 in the world.
Yeah, I saw that too.
And that's with all the conflict and with all the everything.
We're in the end. Lebanon is in the end, literally. So sad, man. It's so sad.
But that's what we, what I'm saying? Again, like let's look at the facts. The facts are that my Christian neighbor here, I can dialogue with. My Muslim neighbor here, I can dialogue with, and he doesn't hate me. It's those extremists that are causing all the problems, and we need to single them out, and we need to root them out of society and say, no, that we will not tolerate this intolerance. We will not tolerate this demonizing of my neighbor. We will not tolerate these agendas that are so evil.
They live among you. It's crazy. I cannot comprehend how they allowed that to happen. Living in the midst of you guys.
So freedom also has its negative, right?
Yes. Yes.
And that's what it is. So with God's grace, we'll be able to move on. We'll be able to drown out these extremists with love, with God, and with loving our neighbor.
Amen.
And so that's my goal. and you were my neighbor many years ago.
Yes.
Um, and I used to hate Lebanese growing up. I used to have, a very strong sentiment towards Lebanese, assuming they're all, Hezbollah, because that's what I related Lebanese with, or Lebanon.
Yeah.
And then later with time and learning about the region and my neighbor, and now we are able to have this conversation
Say
and
it.
and
Remember,
relationship.
say it where that happened. Like,
Remind me, please.
well, I remember when you told me that happened when you went to the military. You're able to learn about Lebanon, and that's why you started
Yes,
singing.
yes, that's right. Yeah,
That was
yeah, that's
like
right.
so mind for me when I heard that from you.
Yeah, because that exactly. Sorry, you're right. And so that's, yeah, during my military service was the first time I got to understand Lebanon, because part of my military service was serving along the border and defending the border,
Mm-hmm.
and then it was working with the Lebanese Christians.
Uh-huh.
They had a special military force that we collaborated with to create peace and monitor the border between Lebanon and Israel,
The safe
which then
zone, right?
the safe zone.
Yeah.
And then later they came under persecution when, like you talked about in 2005,
Mm-hmm.
and onwards, when the radicals took over Lebanon, they
Mm-hmm.
had to flee for their lives, because then they became targeted because they collaborated with the Zionists. So many of those Lebanese actually have asylum in Israel today, by the way.
Over 3,000.
Yeah. So many of them have asylum, and then or in other countries in the world where they fled, because otherwise they would have been slaughtered.
Exactly.
So that's the truth. That's
Mm-hmm.
the reality. And again, we both can grow up in these communities and experience either Israeli jets flying over your head, and then the
Mm-hmm.
trauma that we created when we retaliated towards the enemy in your country, and then you grew up with a certain perspective and viewpoint of us. But then when you grew up,
It was
and like
never.
when I grew up,
It
and then you
was
start
more
to,
like anger. Like, stop.
yeah, right, of course, and rightfully so. And
Yeah.
so then, but then when you grow up, and then when you're understanding exactly who's against who and what have you, then you realize, oh, okay, so my enemy isn't Karine.
Mm-hmm.
My enemy is Hezbollah. My enemy is Iran proxy, or Iran mainly, right? So the
Yeah.
same with Hamas. My enemy is not the Palestinians. My enemy is the terrorist organizations that are, again, funded by Iran, Qatar, and all these other groups that are funding war in the Middle East, because I think they don't like that Israel is a beacon of light here. They don't like that Israel is a place that is projecting peace, and and you know they don't like that. As
No.
the Muslims don't like that. They like conflict. They like war. And I guess when I say the Muslims, I mean the ones who are in control of most of the Muslim nations around here, who are unfortunately the extremists, the jihadists. And so their agenda is not peace. It's not. It's not. Abraham Accords. It's none of those. It's the very opposite. And so it's up to us, the people, also to recognize that and say they don't represent me. These extremists don't represent me, and therefore we can use our social media platforms. We
Mm-hmm.
can, have conversations with people we work with, and whoever you're engaging with, and be like, well, this is my experience. This is what I know. I have a friend called Karine.
Mm-hmm.
I know her from whatever social media. This is what I see her say. This is what I hear Doron say. So apparently there's more to this than the Tucker Carlsons of the world, and the talking heads who are so-called experts. But then there are people like you and me who live in these areas, and we can share our stories, and we can diffuse all of these lies against our
Exactly.
communities.
Amen to that. Let's go.
Karine, thank you so much for this interview. You've been
Yeah.
amazing. And again, guys, go follow her on her social media. I will make sure to share all that in the description below. We'll share also the links and titles to the books that we've been and quotes that we've been sharing, so you can also educate yourselves on that. You can further research and look into that. And then again, if you share this content, then it's going to get out, and we can diffuse all these lies. But it's only you who can do this. we're doing our best with sharing our content and getting it out to whoever we can, with the algorithms against us, with all the different things that are silencing our voice. But you're the one that can share and get truth out there. Thank you guys for listening, and we will see you on the next episode.